My name is Yuri Kruman. I'm the CEO and founder of Master the Talk Consulting. I'm also a speaker, author, contributor to Entrepreneur and Forbes, etc. Now, the subject of this talk, just to give you some background, this is a very interesting closing of circles. Actually, my wife was the one who went to the engineering school, not myself. I met her on campus, and we actually used to live a few blocks away on 115th and Broadway. So this is a very nice invitation. I'm going to be very frank. I was a bit surprised that I'm at an engineers conference. I'm not an engineer by any stretch of the imagination, much more of an entrepreneur. But I would love to just, let's talk about this premise of struggle to success, right? A lot of people here are immigrants, have been through a lot of different story arcs, right? And I think a lot of us are very used to sort of giving this, particular story arc, that I came from here, just as you mentioned, right? With the suitcases, with a few bucks and, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Here we are 20 plus years later. So let me take a step back and give you some background on why my company is called Master the Talk Consulting. Most people ask, well, what in the world is Master the Talk? What is that about? So really, if you think about the conversation in each of our heads, right? It's not just one conversation. It's not about, hey, how do I close the business deal? How do I ace the interview? Or it's not just dealing with other people. That's not really the only conversation. There are really four conversations, the way I look at it. One is with your body, right? So it's not just saying, hey, I need to go on a diet and I need to lift 500 pounds like the guy next to me at the gym, right? You really have to take what you have and do the best with it, right? That's with your body. Number two is with your mind. So who am I? Where am I going? How do I understand my place in the world? Whom am I meant to serve, etc. The third conversation is with other people. That's the quote unquote sexy stuff. So that's something that I've done a lot around executive coaching, meaning, how do I win the business deal, or how do I run a company well? Or for that matter, how do I ace the interview or win the business deal? And the fourth conversation, it's not one that, I don't know if at an engineering conference or really in academia, this is very popular, but the fourth conversation is with the universe or with God, whatever that may be. We'll explore those themes a little bit throughout this talk. So to tell you, there are going to be really two stories. This is on purpose. Both are true, but they're very different stories. So the first story is about myself growing up in the Soviet Union and, loving family, full of books in the house, two academics as parents. My mom is a neuroscience professor. My father was a physicist. And, we immigrated when I was 9 after the Soviet Union fell. And we moved to, of all places, Kentucky. So imagine going from Moscow to Kentucky. That's quite a change. And, I grew up there. It's a wonderful place. And, the future was always about, hey, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a PhD, maybe both. And that's my family's background. My mom is a PhD. My father, I guess, more or less there. And 2 grandparents were doctors. So everything looks great on paper. I go through middle school. I'm very good at, a number of subjects. I'm a little bit ahead because of Russian education and math and science, blah, blah, blah. That's great. We all know this story. And then high school comes, and the subjects that really interest me most are things like art history, Spanish language, things like that. But that doesn't fit the immigrant narrative. It's all about math and science and rigor, and you have to go to school and get an education. You'll be a doctor. You'll write your novels later. Okay, so I go to college, get into a great school, UPenn, got into Columbia as well, and my sister was very, very annoyed that I didn't come to New York. Alas, that's life. In college, I studied a lot of different things. I started out on the pre-med track, and I quickly realized that, I'm just way out of my depth. The school I had in Kentucky, as great as it was, didn't really prepare me for this level of competition. So I kind of just go through the motions, do my best. I'm not a great pre-med student. In fact, by the end of my 5th semester, when I happened to break my wrist, and, being a Soviet product, it's all about, hey, I can handle this. I'm self-sufficient. I'm not going to ask for help. All right, so I kind of go through this process, terrible grades, no more medicine because I don't have the grades, and begins this progression of I've disappointed people, I've gone in the wrong direction, I'm not fulfilling expectations. But hey, I need to go and do grad school, right? We all know this. You have to have grad school, then you can do whatever. So I go to NYU for neuroscience, and I'm on a training grant. Everything is great. I'm going to be my mom's colleague. I've already been doing research with her. And, in the first year, I just quickly realized this is not a good fit. I really shouldn't be here. I love the subject, but I'm not all about putting on blinders and following an academic discipline. That's not me. That's not who I am. And there in that first year, I actually started my first company. You're going to love this one. It was a Jewish social network called JuicyJews.com. I still have the t-shirts. So, basically, I wanted to bring people together in my community. I happen to be Jewish. And I kind of, without being a coder, I created an algorithm and created this company. And, I paid some guys in India to do the work. And unfortunately, it died. But it gave me a sense that I want to be an entrepreneur. This is who I am. I like creating things. I like building them. I probably should go learn how to do this well and not just hope for the best. So from there began, this, again, series of disappointments. My mom was just, she just felt terrible. You're not going to be my colleague. But hey, you still need that grad degree. Okay, so I went and worked for a year as a paralegal, and then I started law school because, if you can't hack it in medicine, you got to at least have law school, right? So I go to law school. While I'm in law school, it's a pretty solid school. Everything looks great. I'm working in everything from personal injury. Somehow, I'm part of this firm, Scott Sherman and Associates, and I'm there for the summer, and he somehow got me onto a commercial on Russian primetime television where my voice is dubbed, and then I get recognized by cabbies around the city. Then another one was me working for an insurance defense litigation firm for a summer, and on the last day, they tried to say, okay, we're firing you, and we're not going to pay you for the last week. So a lot of very strange experiences. Then another time I get a call from a friend. She says, hey, somebody at the New Yorker magazine needs a fact checker who knows Russian. I'm in law school. I'm writing a novel. I've always been very literary. I've always loved books, so this is huge. So I work at the New Yorker for a week as a fact checker. And one day I get a paper across my desk called Garry Kasparov. And I froze because Garry Kasparov is my hero from childhood. I have the same birthday as him. He's 20 years older than me. So so I called Garry Kasparov a little bit like this. And okay, did you say what what it says you said? Yes, great. Okay, wonderful. So I finished law school. I'm doing an internship at the very end in a hedge fund. I know none of this seems to make sense, but it does wrap neatly later, I promise. So I'm at this hedge fund, and suddenly the economy just goes down the drain, right? And we have the Great Recession. Here I am graduating law school. Suddenly the legal profession seems to be in turmoil. There are no jobs. And here I am sort of trying to make the best of it. And, I've now accumulated $260K in law school debt. Congratulations. So I graduate into this market where there are no jobs. I have to move back home with my mom for 2 months in Texas. Wonderful, but I couldn't handle more than 2 months. And meanwhile, my girlfriend of 4.5 years breaks up with me. And I move back because I get two friends that say, hey, move back. We got to have you back here. You can stay on my couch. You can stay on my couch. So I moved back. And right at the same time, I actually met my wife a few blocks away here at Chabad House. And she forgot my name 5 times. It was really a very funny courtship. But in the end, we were having drinks and get an email that a friend is moving out of Columbia Housing. And as I think many of you know, if you have a chance to live in Columbia Housing, you have to grab it. There's no other way. So I say, look, I know this is nuts. We're just dating for 2 months, but we both need a place to live. She also was staying on a friend's couch. So we move in together. I get a ring. We get married a week later. And then 9 months later, we do the religious ceremony. And so we started our life together. And here I am, between projects. I'm working in finance because finance seems to have at least some kind of, stability and money and revenue. And, I convince my way onto a project and it pays really well, then crash. And then, of course, she learns about my debt. Oh, my God, right? Typical millennial story. But the point is that, eventually I go through finance. I do projects. It's not a good fit. It's not who I am. It's not what I'm meant to do. I go into health tech. It's more my speed. It's something that I've always wanted to do because, since I'm a kid, everything is around health. My mom has always been someone who's a PhD, but also someone who is in alternative medicine. So this kind of mindset, how do I optimize my health? How do I eat the right things? That's just, genetic and epigenetic at the same time. So I go into health tech. I somehow convince people in VC-backed startups to hire me as a finance and operations person at a director level, essentially, with zero experience. It's the craziest thing in the world when you go into that experience knowing nothing and you have to suddenly learn everything within a few weeks. I don't recommend it for anyone in case that's in consideration. Then I talked my way into another company doing product management, also at a senior level. So the theme was basically I can get my way into anywhere, but why am I doing it, right? I'm doing it because I need to pay debt, because I need to support my family, but I'm not doing it because of any inherent reasons. This is not what I'm really meant to do. So ultimately, how my company came around is that after the third startup where I worked, I drank the Kool-Aid, I got friends and family to invest, and it didn't work out because the founder, whom I knew from college, we didn't get along. So here I am. I'm out of the startup world. I can't kind of continue just the way things are. It's a low point. It's one of many low points that one encounters as an entrepreneur, right? And searching for oneself, searching for the people that you serve. So here I am. And my wife and I, we decide, look, we have a kid. We have a second one on the way. And we need to do something. So I started my company. I've been doing coaching for a while. That's always been my personality. People stop me in the street for some reason, tell me their life story. And I started Master the Talk Consulting, where I started coaching people like myself in their mid-career, millennials kind of lost or not really clear on who they are, where they're going, to figure out who they are and find the place where they can do their life's best work. And after doing this coaching for several years, learning from hundreds of people what their story arcs are, what their pain points are, I started seeing patterns. And I'm seeing people leaving great companies in the Fortune 500, in the startup world, because they're just misaligned. They forgot their story. They forgot who they are. And so for me, that became my validation, because after all this disappointment and sort of abandoning things midstream, I finally found my thing. And my thing was always not out there in the world. It was sitting on my nose the whole time. So as an entrepreneur, that often happens. You go looking for something out in the world, a brilliant idea, something that'll win you the Nobel Prize, and it turns out to be something very simple, a problem that you've had to solve for yourself that now you can solve for others. Now that's one story. The other story is the more traditional one. That here's a Russian immigrant who made it despite staggering odds, being in a single-parent family and growing up without any support, nobody in finance, law, or medicine, and making his way through college and making his way through law school and dealing with massive debt, living in New York, and figuring out his way despite all of these ups and downs, and disappointing a bunch of people, and then finding that validation. And, everything looks great when it says, Forbes, an entrepreneur, and all that great stuff. But the truth is, there is no one story. There is no one story in going through struggle to success. Success is always fleeting. Struggle is pretty constant. You might have moments where you get validation. They put you up on a stage or they put your name in some publication. But the simple truth is, all of those stories that we tell ourselves in our head, right, that, hey, I'm not good enough, I don't have the right degree, or I don't have this experience, that's standard, that's fight or flight. The other conversations, I want to wrap this back up, right, so we talked about 4 conversations. One is with your body, right, so you have to optimize what you have, for good, for bad, otherwise, etc. Right? Then you have to think about your own mental models. So how do I look at the world? How do I process information? How do I make decisions? How do I see my role in the world? You have to optimize those things for yourself. You have to be aware of all the different biases that you have from where you grew up, your culture, your profession, your mindset, your experience. All of those things create biases and they create silos. So it's very important to check in with those regularly. And that means maybe you go to lectures, you read books, whatever it is. The third one, as we mentioned, is with other people, right? So this is not just about how do I butter the bread? How do I get, what I want? It's really about understanding, okay, well, who am I? So, God, or, whatever force brought me here through all of this in order to serve people, in order to help them go through a certain process in life, right? To do something perhaps cheaper, better, faster in the simplest business sense, or perhaps to avoid pain, to avoid anxiety, right? So you have to really understand who are those people that you're meant to be with, right? And also who are people that you're not meant to be with, because that's often the biggest issue, right? We end up being with people because they're part of our social club or because they're part of our work situation, right? That don't really fit who we are, what we're meant to do, and we get stuck. Everybody gets stuck at a certain point. So you have to constantly check in with those. And then the last one is, why am I here? Why did you make me go through this? God or universe or whatever your version of that is, right? And the premise of what I do, even though, in the business context, really what I do in the business world is partly helping companies to set up the conditions for their employees to do their life's best work. So maybe that's around productivity or project management, but really it's around being human. It's about saying, hey, okay, I may be the boss, but I've struggled and I've been through very low points, and I'm fine sharing that because that's normal. That's not something that may go into Forbes or Entrepreneur, but that's the truth, right? So really getting bosses and managers vulnerable in front of their employees so that everyone can open up and say, hey, we're all doing our best. We're all struggling through this thing called life. And most of us have no idea, right? One of the things that happened to me while building my business, 2 months in, imagine my 2-month-old daughter was diagnosed with cancer. And it's a crushing blow. After all the failure, all the disappointment, I'm building my business, I'm gaining traction, and right? So what do you do in that situation? Well, for good reason, in my case, I believe in one God. So God put me through all of those experiences so that I could deal with this situation. And I could just say, okay, I'm going to go to Sloan Kettering, I'll take care of her, I'll make sure our older daughter is taken care of, and I'm still building my business. What that does to you is it refines things very quickly because you know what's essential. And again, God forbid anybody would have to go through that, truly. But when you go through life and you hit rock bottom and you really do that over and over, what it does for you is refines who you are, not just your moral character, but not just your business skills, not that ability to speak with other people and relate with them, but it really helps you to understand what's essential. What do you really need in your life? What's feeding you? And also what's killing you, right? So in that situation, that's what helped me to really be clear on who I am, whom am I serving, how do I do it, and how do I find a way to build a business and serve my clients, et cetera, while I'm dealing with all this stuff. And one of the lessons for me from all of this, right, not seeing struggle to success as some kind of, magic golden story with this amazing bookends. It's still a struggle, even when you reach a certain level. Okay, I made it. No, you didn't, because at this level, people are even more talented. There's even more to do. There's even more business contracts to win. There's no such thing as this is it, terminal success, right? And there's also no such thing as terminal struggle, because that means something in your head is preventing you from enjoying the moment. So even if you're, dealing with health crisis or financial crisis or something else, you should be able to take time during your week. In my case, the Sabbath, right? We just passed that. So you take the Sabbath and you think, okay, I'm not on my phone. I'm not turning on electricity. I'm not running around with business. I'm just going to focus on myself and my family. I'm just going to spend time at home. I'm going to go to synagogue in my case, right? And I'm going to really try to understand how, let's say, the Torah portion of the week relates to what I'm going through. There's always a relation, right? So that's my particular way of checking in with that, God/universe component. Now, I want to leave you just with one last image. If you think of a drone, okay, so what is a drone? A drone is something that can go up, down, left, right. It can accelerate, decelerate. But if you look at the 4 things that I mentioned, right, body, mind, other people, and the universe, they're like 4 propellers. In order for you to truly not just take off, but really to be able to modulate all those areas of your life effectively, you need to tightly control all 4 of those propellers. right? So you constantly need to have a very solid routine in the way that maybe you eat breakfast, the way that you make sure to get all the vitamins and nutrients. But you have to do that for yourself, right? Taking into account maybe you have sensitivities to certain foods, etc. So you have to optimize for yourself. Number two, you have to make sure that your mental models are in the right place. And that means how you make decisions, how you process information, and all of those life skills that you may not have learned in school. Maybe how do you manage your career, how to manage your finances, and how to run a business. Because in the end, when you take ownership of whether that's your career or health, you're really running a business. The beautiful thing about running a business is that it forces you to cut away all the nonsense, everything non-essential. And when you run things that way, in your health, in your mind, how you deal with other people, how you deal with the universe, you cut away a lot of the wrong people and connections and wasting of time. So just remember, if you take away nothing else from this talk, that all of us are drones, right? All of us are doing our best to fly and take off and see the world and see how things really work. But if any of those four are not working, we'll either never really make it far or we'll never make it off the ground. So I wish you all the best. Thank you very much.